everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel, and I know you're probably wondering where I was yesterday because I did not put up a Vlogmas day 12 video. I skipped, and I know that stinks because I really wanted to be consistent during Vlogmas. I've never done like 25 days of videos in a row, and I really wanted to be consistent, but unfortunately I did not start recording ahead of time like I thought I would. I'm recording like as I go, and I just didn't do anything yesterday. I'll be honest with you. I have been a dead run, non-stop stuff every single weekend and every day for the last month and a half. And so yesterday I had a Christmas party with my Teal Hearts group, which is my ovarian cancer survivor group, and I went grocery shopping, and then I was like, you know what, I'm not doing anything today. So I sat on the couch and watched Christmas movies with my dad and filled out Christmas cards. So I don't have a really good excuse for not putting up a video yesterday, but I'm back today. So welcome to day 13 of Vlogmas. And today for today and tomorrow, I'm going through my lowest rated books of the year and my top rated books of the year. So I'm going to go through my lowest rated books today. So these are the books that I either DNF'd or I gave them 1 star. I have one book that's like 1.5 stars, but anything that was like 1 star or a complete DNF, I'm including in this list. And obviously the DNF books, I really can't give you a whole lot of detail on because I DNF'd them, but I will tell you what I know. So for the year so far, I DNF 12 books. I don't DNF very often. I usually try to push through because I feel like, I don't know, I feel funny about DNFing books. I will DNF them, but I usually only do it when it's just a book I just can't get through because I feel like an author put a lot of work into writing the book, and as an author myself, I like to at least give it a chance. And also because I found that sometimes you have a book that like it starts off slow and you can't get into, or something happens and it makes the character unlikable. But if you continue to read it, then you end up liking it at the end, or it ends up being an okay book at the end. But these are some ones that I just could not get through, and so I DNF'd. So the very first one is The Disgraced Bride by Rose Pearson. This was a historical romance, and it wasn't necessarily that I disliked the characters, but I thought that their way of speaking was really odd. So like their dialogue was a little much. So they would say things like, I shall look for the letter that was supposed to be sent to me, or like, 'tis knowledge that led me to that decision. And I'm just like, does anybody talk like that? Maybe they did back in the day, but like, does anybody talk like that? I couldn't get past the dialogue. It was some of the worst dialogue I've ever read, and I'm sorry to say that to the author, but I just couldn't get past it. But it was a good premise. I mean, I liked the story idea, and the characters were likable. I just didn't like the speech pattern and the way the dialogue was written. So I ended up DNFing it like maybe a third of the way through the book. The second one I DNF'd was The Director by Renee Rose. This is a mafia romance, and one of the reasons that I DNF'd this book was it was very, very heavy BDSM, which you guys know I don't like to read books that are like really heavy anything in the sheets, if you get my drift. So I could not get past that. It also has a secret baby trope, which is not my favorite trope in the world. I can read secret baby trope, and sometimes I do like secret baby trope books, but they have to be well done. And then this one with the whole like them banging all the time was a little much for me, and it was a little bit above my comfort level, so I had to DNF that one as well. Third one I DNF'd was called Trey, European Redemption by Shandy Boys. This was also a mafia romance, and this one was just very violent. And I know that mafia romances tend to include violence, but this was like graphically violent. There were violent scenes in pretty much every chapter, and it was just too much for me. I couldn't get past it. It was uncomfortably violent for me. And so, you know, meanwhile, like I read mafia all the time, or like Cartel or Motorcycle Club, things like that. There's going to be violence in those, but I felt like this was just too much, and you couldn't get a break. Like it was one thing after another. Whereas normally, if you're reading a mafia romance, you might have a violent scene, but then it's a good section of the book where nothing violent happens, so it kind of calms you down, and then maybe there's one more. This was like every chapter, so I just couldn't take it. The next book was Prince with Benefits by Nicole Snow. I was listening to this one on audiobook. This is a royalty romance set in contemporary times where it's the normal trope of like the prince has to get married in order to inherit the throne and to not lose his inheritance to the royal family or whatever. And so he ends up having someone pretend to be his fiance. And this one, it was just a little too unbelievable in that they started sleeping together within like just a couple chapters in, and they didn't really have a relationship, and it was banging on every page. It felt more like it was a sexual relationship than a romantic relationship. It was just way too much, way too over the top. And I was like, look, there's no plot here enough for me to follow. Now, I've heard people say that this book ends well, so I may go back and revisit it in the future, but I just could not get past it. It was just too much banging way out right from the front. And also the thoughts going through his head. He was always like constantly thinking about it. And I'm like, really, guys? Like, are you 12? Are you 13? Like, grow up, dude. Next book was Rush by Maya Banks. This one was a contemporary romance. I talked about this one in a lot of detail. I can't remember when I was planning on reading this, but this is kind of like a 50 Shades knockoff in a lot of ways. I love Maya Banks. I'm actually reading a book from her right now that I adore. It's such a good book. But this one just felt kind of 50 Shades of Grey-ish. Pretty much the same like premise. And so I couldn't get behind it because to me it just seemed like almost a copycat, even though I don't think she meant it that way, so I didn't like it, which is why I DNF'd. The one after that was 12 Years Gone by KG Callis, and it's a thriller. I don't read a lot of thrillers. I could not get into this one. I thought it was boring, so I DNF'd. Same thing for the next one, Lord Sebastian's Secret by Jane Ashford, historical romance. It checked off all the boxes. You had the guy who like had dyslexia or something, so you had like disability representation, and it seemed so like such a good plot idea, but I was like, I am so bored, especially when there was an entire chapter about her mother's corgis, or was it corgis or bulldogs? I don't know. She had a dog and they were breeding dogs, and it was a whole chapter about dogs, and I was like, look, I love dogs, but we're not here to read about dogs. We're here to read romance. So that was another one I DNF'd. The next one was The Initiation by Nikki Sloan, and I think I'm going to hurt people's feelings with this one, but again, I DNF'd this one because I just could not get into the plot. I know that it's a contemporary romance. It is, I think it takes place like a futuristic society or something like that, but I just couldn't get into it. This is another one that like they were banging right off the bat, and I just could not like, said that funny, but banging right off the bat, and I could not get into it. I felt like you guys don't really know each other that well. This is a little too much for me. It was out of my comfort zone, but I also have friends who loved that book, and it's one of their favorite, like, I think it's a series or a trilogy or something, and they love all of them. I just couldn't get behind it. Only a couple more. The last three I just talked about in my last wrap-up video, so these are no surprises. 365 Days by Blanka Lipinska. This is a mafia romance. This is the book that is the English translation of the Polish book that spawned the movie. So it was a Polish book, then it was a movie, then it was an English translation of the Polish book. And I think the English translation is just not done well. I don't know who their translator was, but I've had several people talk about this. I think the reason why the book doesn't work for me is because I don't think it's translated well, if that makes sense. It's translated very like I would translate French or something, you know what I mean? Like very like textbook translating. And it, because of that, you kind of lose the emotion of the characters and like the personality of the characters. So I just didn't care for it. It made them almost unlikable because you really didn't get the true characters' feelings. You got sort of like this representation that came through the translation. So if I spoke Polish and I read this book in Polish, I might like it, but I feel like the English translation isn't done well. Next one is Rubble Air by Vi Keeland and Penelope Ward. This one is a contemporary romance, and here's the thing, I think it's Vi or V, I'm calling her Vi. I love Vi Keeland. I've read so many books from her, and I've read several that are her with Penelope Ward that I love, but this book just didn't work for me, and it's because of a plot twist. So this one is going to have a spoiler in case you have not read it, so spoiler alert, is that there's a plot twist in the book where just where the couple is starting to get together, you find out that the heroine is pregnant from a previous relationship, so it's a secret baby trope, but from a person that she was with prior to meeting the hero of the novel. So it was just like, Was that needed? They already were overcoming a lot of things to be together in this book, and then you had to throw in a baby. Like, it didn't work for me, so I DNF'd. And then the last book I DNF'd so far for 2021 was Brutal Captor Part 2 by Amber Adams. This is a mafia romance. I actually really enjoyed the first part, and I enjoyed the second part, but it's a serial novel. Do you guys remember when those were popular? And serial novels where you get like a couple chapters, and then it cuts you off, you have to buy the next section, then a couple chapters, it cuts you off, you have to buy the next section, and it was annoying. I don't want to read 10 sections of a book, just give me one big book and let me read it. So I was like, I'm not going to download 20 parts or whatever. So I just was like, I'm done. But I did actually really like the story. If she ever creates a box set of some sort that has all of them in one box set, I'll probably buy that because I did like it. I just DNF'd because I was annoyed with all the different parts. And those are all of my DNFs. So only 12 DNFs for 2021 so far. We have a couple weeks left of December, but I doubt that I DNF because I actually think I'm going to spend some of my last couple weeks of the year rereading some of my favorites of the year, so we'll see. All right, so then I have some 1-star books, and I only have 4 books that were 1 stars. Well, I have 3 that were 1 star and 1 that was 1.5 stars. The first 2 I read in February are in January, sorry. First one is The Darkest Night by Fiona Davenport. This was a paranormal romance that had to do with vampires. And the second book was Captured by Love by Ella Good. This is also a contemporary romance that I gave 1 star to. And to be honest with you guys, I cannot remember why I only gave them 1 star. You'll have to go back and watch my January video because I don't remember. But I just remember not liking them, not liking the plots. I'll have to go back and watch my video myself to see why that was. So I'll link my January video up here so you can go back and watch because I don't know. I did not keep my notes. I just know that I gave them 1 star. And then in June, I read Devil You Hate, not The Devil, by J.L. Beck and C. Hallman. And this was also a contemporary romance that was mafia. And in this book, you have Nick and Celia, and Nick kidnaps Celia from a rival mafia family with the intention of selling her into like a sex ring, sex slavery type thing. But it was very, very violent, and even though you're supposed to think that he's falling in love with her in the book, it's like it's extremely violent. There's a lot of like the sex trade going on. He beats her at one point. He's very mean to her at the beginning of the book. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how are they going to turn this around? Celia was very, very, like, unlikable in that she was very weak and didn't really have a backbone. And then Nick was just, like, mean, controlling, and, like, a monster. I came very close to DNFing this one. I did not like it. And it ends on a cliffhanger. And honestly, the characters are so unlikable that I didn't want to read the second part. So I never continued the book. I don't know what happens to these two. But I remember thinking, like, I don't like these characters, so I don't see how they're going to turn that around. And then the last one I gave low rating to, I gave this one 1.5 stars, and this was Rogue by Blair Babylon. I can't talk. It's a contemporary romance, and this was the one that I was just like, I don't even know what I read. Don't even know what I read. It totally freaked me out, and I was like, I'm out. So I'm going to read because it's been a while. In this one, you have Maxence, whose real name is Augustine. You have Dree, whose real name is Andrea. And they meet in a bar where Dree is wasted and drunk and falling off the bar. And you have Maxence, who comes and rescues her, and he ends up taking her back to her hotel, hostel, whatever she is. Wherever she's staying, she's in Paris. And he tries to take care of her because she knows she's drunk. The two of them end up sleeping together. He runs away because runs away. It was a one-night stand, I guess, but then he feels guilty and comes back and brings her breakfast. So then they have them going all over Paris, and he's showing her things, but then people know him, and he's real shady, and she's like, what's going on? So she's like, is he, a secret mafia dude? Is he like secret royalty? She's trying to figure out like why everybody knows him, but he won't use his real name. And at the end of the book, what you actually find out is that Maxence is like secretly training to become a Jesuit priest or something like that. And I'm just like, this is the craziest thing I've ever read in my life. The plot was all over the place. And the bad part was like, it started off really well, but then when it started going all these loopholes, like she had this boyfriend who stole her money, and then people were trying to put her in jail, and then is he part of the mafia, and then maybe he's royalty, and then they brought in the Catholic Church, and then suddenly he's a priest, and I'm just like, I read it, but I was like, I don't even know what I read. So 1.5 stars for that. And then everything else I had was higher rated. I had a couple 2-star books, but to me they weren't that bad, so I did not really include the 2 stars. I had a couple 2 stars, 2 stars, and then I had like, I think 1 2.5 star. Yeah, I had a 1 or 2 2.5 stars, so not too many low rated after that. So that is all my low rated books for the year. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about some of my favorite books of all time for this year, and I have some really good ones that you probably already heard me talk about, but I'm still excited to share with you again. All right, guys, I will be back tomorrow for day 14, and we're going to keep going along. We're counting down to Christmas. Bye, guys.